Would you like to get a little more organized with your clamps? And maybe you've been peeking at my clamp racks, wondering how I made them. Well, I'm going to show you how I made them and why I made them the way I did if you just stick around. All right, well, let's get into it. My clamp racks, I watch videos too, and I am in the habit of looking behind the presenter and seeing what they got and how they're organized, because I'm just so organized. Well, we all can use a little more, but some of you have been asking about my clamp racks, and this has gone on for a while, so I figured it's time that I show you my clamp racks. Let's actually get a little closer to them, and I'm going to show you how they are. They're not really that fancy. I'm afraid you might be a little disappointed. But let's start with these up here. Now, all it is, in this case, it's a piece of plywood attached to the wall. But before attaching it to the wall, these blocks were attached to the piece of plywood. Okay, that's the simplest form. All right, I've got two types here. Now, these blocks are simply 2x4s. So if you can get yourself a good straight 2x4 and chop it up, these blocks they all are at 5 3/4. That's not totally important, but I remember playing around with that. You could go a little longer if you want, but if you go too short, your clamps will not have something to lean against. They might be too far forward here and fall out. These are deeper clamps, so I needed a deeper block in order to get over the center of gravity and hold these in place. Okay, so it's simply a block. In this case, these blocks are 3 inches wide, so I just ripped like a 1/2 inch off that 2x4. So it's got a flat back, and it's still got the rounded fronts of the 2x4. And now the spacing, you want to make, at least, I like to have it at least a 1/16, even a little more in width, a little more than a 1/16 over how wide these are. So these particular clamps measure 3/8 wide, and these grooves are right about 1/2 inch. So it makes it easy to put them in, okay? Now, if you notice, my clamps are just sitting on top of the blocks. I think I started out and I was going like this every time, So I put the bar against the wall so it had more, the center of gravity was closer to the wall. If you turn it around the other way, you're going to be always biting them on there. And there's nothing wrong with that. But to me, it just takes more time. And you're going to be putting these on and off a lot. And I just like to make it simple. So I got to the point where I realized I was more habitually just pushing them all the way up and sitting them right on top. That's all you need to do. Because they sit in there, they're not going to fall off, and you just grab and go. So you come back and you put them right on. It's the same thing with these F clamps. These are a little thinner, so that groove up there is a little less than a 1/2 inch, but just the same, right on, and just sits up there like that. They're not biting on there in any way. Now, these are called K bodies. These are the F clamps. These are all Bessie clamps. I think we talked about them here and there. And they come in different strengths and depth of the throat here that for catching things. And the old adage is true. You never can have enough clamps. Now, when you're mounting it to the wall, you need to anchor, obviously, into some studs because you're going to be putting potentially a lot of weight on here, depending on what style clamps. I have the K bodies and these heavier guys here, but then if you get into these I-beam clamps, these can get really heavy. These are 3-foot I-beams, and I've got some 4-footers over there, and it adds up if you're going to put them all across. Now, this one, I can see I've got 3 screws right in the middle of that groove there. You builder types over there know that most studs are 16-inch centers. And since I actually was involved in building this shop, I know they're 16-inch centers. And that the way I know if I measure over 16, I'm in this gap here. So if I pull this, there I can see another 3 screws anchoring it in. That's all that's holding this in, but that's a lot. That's a lot of screws anchoring 6 right into the stud. Now, that would have taken a lot of planning, you know, to figure out, oh, I've got to make sure that I get the studs anchored. I could have put a longer piece of plywood back there, and then I would have just had it anchored at the top. But there's another way that you can make these that doesn't matter about figuring out the spacing. And that's by hanging your clamp rack on a French cleat. And that's what I'm going to show you how to do. Check this one out. This one I removed all the clamps, and this one
more my height.
Yeah, let's get down to earth here.
Yeah.
This one is very similar in dimension, but check this out. It's got a secondary rail here that's a French cleat. This is a great way of hanging cabinets and things that have a lot of weight. This is what we used on our hanging tool cabinet, but it's just an angled cut, usually about 40 to 45 degrees, and you rip that piece so you have the opposite angle here facing up, and this part gets secured to the wall, and then this part drops in and it's held, and then you can throw some screws in there just to hold it in place. But it's very strong because of this cleat anchored to the wall. Now here's where it helps. If you're going to make a longer one like this one here, let's check this out. This is a little over 42, 42 and a quarter to be exact. But the length can vary. You can make them whatever length you want that'll fit your space. But the thing here is, I didn't have to do all that careful planning and find my studs and make sure that I hit the groove in here, because I did that with the backing of the French cleat that gets attached to the wall. So there you see double screws here, double screws here. If we measure those, they're 16-inch on centers, and then you have another over there. And let me just throw in one more screw over there, just to accent the point. I'm just gonna all right, so that is strong and on there well. And there we go. We've got the backbone or the anchor for our cleat rack. Now here, I'm just gonna go ahead and attach these blocks to the top part of the cleat, and then it can drop on and be secured. Now, how do you make one of these? Well, it's pretty simple. You just need the 3/4 inch piece of plywood. Now I'm using plywood just for the strength. I know it won't split or anything. That's going on the wall. And then I can use anything. I'm gonna use pine for the French cleat here. So we're just going 5 3/4 here. You could go 6 and just rip. I would start 6 and then rip your diagonal on your French cleat. But come on over the bench.
Tom, did you say how long the screws were at any point there?
Oh, no, I didn't. But the ones I'm running into the stud, I'm going through 3/4 inch plywood, then through 1/2 inch sheetrock. So I'm 1 1/4 inches there. And then I really want to get strongly anchored into the stud. So I'm going to use 2.5 inch screws. I've got 2.5 inch drywall type deep thread screws. Okay. All right. That's what you want to use to get into the wall. All right. Now I'm going to do just a little model mock-up here. Here's my back piece of plywood. I've already ripped it to 5 3/4, but here I'm starting closer, just under 6, all right? Because I've got to cut the diagonal. I'm going to lose the saw curve here, okay? So if we look, I've already marked on one end the diagonal. So I just found the center by using a square just to find that line, and then the center this way. And then I marked the diagonal on both sides of that center point showing the curve. So this is what the saw is going to cut away. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect, but I was just trying to get equal top and bottom piece. You don't have to be that fussy about it, but if you do want to be, there you go. Now, I'm going to mark the pieces. Here's kind of the front. That may be my front. I'll just accentuate that arrow if you can't see it. Okay, there's my top. And so this part will get attached to the cleat that goes on the wall. All right. All right, so here we go. Let's head over to the table saw and we'll go ahead and cut this. You know what else? While we're over the table saw, so you can speed this along, I'm going to switch out and cut those vertical pieces. So I had some white pine that I just trued up and ripped it. So here we go. I'm ripping them for these clamps at 1 5/8 deep, but 1.5 inches wide, just mimicking the stud. So 1.5 inches width, and I'm going to make them 1 5/8 inches. You could make them a little deeper if you wanted, but that's enough, I think. And we're going to just let's mark a side that's going to get attached to, this will get glued to the surface. So before I cut this up into a bunch of shorter segments, I'm going to break this edge so I don't have to grab and break every individual one. I can just do this long piece. For this, I'll just use a spoke shave, and I've got it set pretty strong, so just like that, 4 passes will get you. If you're using the regular 2x4, you're going to already have a radius edge there anyway. But there we go. Now that'll be the side we'll put on the glue side. And we can now take our piece over to cut our angle, and we're also going to cut our pieces up. So let's head over to the table saw. Let's go ahead and cut that bevel first. We're going to lay the blade over, and then we'll make our cut. So I'm just going to use the tilt mechanism here. And I could stop at 40, but I'll go all the way till it stops right at 45. There it is. And let's see how we're set here. Okay. I'm just going to move this over a little bit. Okay. That's fussy enough. And I'll drop this down a little bit. There it is. Okay, let's get our gear on. And I'm just gonna keep this tight against the fence, and we'll push it right through. And we'll turn on the dust collector. We've gotten our cleat ready, and if you're making several of these, you go ahead and rip them all at one time. Then I'm just going to tip this blade back up straight. Get it right there up at 90. Crank it up a little. Let's go ahead and verify that we're true. I'll do that right between the saw teeth. That looks good. And now I'm going to bring up the crosscut sled, which I've already outfitted with a stop. Okay, that stop is in place to give us 5 3/4. Here's our radius edge here. We'll just set it on there and go ahead and cut across and see how many we get. All right, we got 5. Let's head back. We've got now our wall cleat, and we're just gonna put this on, and we'll start from the right side. And once we get all our spacing, we can always trim it after on this end. But we'll start flush on this end and go from there. Now this is the bottom, so I wanna make sure I've got my French cleat in place. This is going to be attached to the wall like this. So that gives us the perfect kind of connection. And when the cleat fits in, you see how nice that is. It almost doesn't need to be screwed to the wall after, but we will. All right, so there, we've got that. So we're going to go ahead and attach the lower end of that to the base. I'm just going to use some tight bond here. And we'll just get some on here.
Did you ever consider making a mobile clamp holder, Tom?
Oh, yeah. Thank you for mentioning that. I wanted to talk about that. There are lots of different options for clamp holders. Some of the considerations are, you know, if you want them to be mobile, build a cart. Yeah, I've seen some great ideas for carts. A lot of times they're like A-frames and the clamps are leaning in, and you can get a lot of clamps on a cart like that, and you can get them around. Now, if you're in a smaller shop, there's no real need to wheel your clamps around. You're gonna probably put them on the wall near where you're gonna be assembling. And the nice thing about that on the wall is they're up out of the way. When you have a clamp cart, you do take up some precious floor space if you're in a smaller space. I just put those in that corner. I liked the amount of space I had there. It was kind of a dead corner. And I know I'm setting up most of the time right here or on my setup table there, or when we have classes, we just grab them from up there and it works out nicely. But you've got to just choose whichever method. So I'm showing you the wall-mounted method tonight.
If you could
That's
also
all I
talk
got.
about a little bit maybe later about how you've mounted the wooden ones that you have, that might be helpful as well.
Oh,
Jordan's
yeah.
is-
I'm not going to be able to go heavily into that, but
Maybe you
it's
just
a
show it.
kind of a different, yeah, I'll show you that in a nutshell. All right, so got some 1 1/4 inch in here. I'm just going to tack this and get it started.
Tom, Tony's asking why not just anchor the French cleat directly to the wall? Too simple?
Yeah, that's too simple, Tony. I just liked how it gets you away from the wall a little bit. But yeah, you could be very direct and put it right there. Let me finish this up. I just like the added beef, and I'm like anchoring it up here through the plywood. If you came down here, you'd be anchoring. You could make a wider French cleat and then pop it on there. Let's see how it works out. So I've got that all glued on there. I'm tacked on. I'm starting from the right side across. So put another one here. This is all set, ready to attach to the wall wherever you want. You could lay out where your studs are into the plywood later. All right, so getting the rest of it now, we're going to take our top piece, and this is going to set right in like that. So I'll drop right in, and I'm going to go flush with this one with our first piece. So we'll set it flush with the end, and I don't need it on here anymore. Let's take this away just to get ourselves oriented. We're going to get some glue on there. And go flush with the end. And we could make sure we're square here. That's good. And I'm going to go ahead and tack that in place. I like to wait for the glue to grab a little more. It's a little greasy right now. If you put on a lighter amount, you can then hold it and tack it. I'm just going to tack it from underneath. I'll get my safety glasses on. after you shoot a couple nails, you put your safety glasses on. All right, so we've got our first one on, and then we're going to use our spacer block. I'm just going to go a 9/16 for this one, because this will accommodate the others. Even those F clamps will fit in 9/16, but this will accommodate bar clamps as well. I may end up using this for some other clamps I have. So let's just put a little in here. And we'll go ahead and tack that one. And get it flush with the top there. And I'll put some screws in the back there after. Let's check how square we are. Pretty close. Throw another one in there. And you get the idea. We would continue on like this all the way across. Now, once I've gotten them in, I like to shoot a screw in the back just to double sure that these blocks are going to hold well. They should be fine, but just gives you that assurance.
Yikes.
I think you say that every time.
It's so loud. Crazy.
All right, one more time. Loud. And there we go. So we go ahead and continue across, and that's it. I just have all these blocks. They're nice and plumb. And then when I get over to the end, I'm just going to, let's say we end up at an odd space like that. You could leave it there, or you could trim it and also trim your backer piece at the same time if you want it flush and a clean job of it or whatever. So once you've got that, now you have just the simplicity of setting your stock on the wall. Here's the finished one. You can see on the back, we've got screws in there and we pre-tacked them and everything's all set here. So this one goes on. Well, first we would mount, as I already showed you, we've got our cleat, our plywood cleat with our wedge here. But here we go. We're going to just set it on there, and it sits over, and there it is. It's on a nice cleat, and I got it flush on the ends, and I just have to zip in a few screws here.
You're not going to pillow those blocks, Tom?
Pillow? No, I'm not pillowing the blocks.
We're disappointed in you.
I did. I did mean to point out one more thing. I did, I didn't pillow them, but I did soften the top and bottom edge as well. So
Of course.
there it is. So now that just holds it in place. It's sitting on that cleat nicely. Without that, you'd be trying to find the location, between these pieces. You'd be trying to screw the French cleat in. Also, it would want to tip a little forward. It's going to sit in there, but it would want to be a little tippy. So you want to anchor it and hit some studs there. But here you don't have to. You can just shoot it right into that backer piece of plywood. Now, I did take on those blocks, like after you've got it, see you've got these softened edges here, you can also hit these low ones. I'm just skewing the plane.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. There's your pillowing. I know you guys, you want to soften them a little bit, and that's just a hard edge. That's just unacceptable. So we're going to just skew, go across there.
Cannot accept that.
There it is.
Tolerable.
Nice and set. And then when that's all dry, we'd be attaching this one, and it drops in, set it, and I'll have a new clamp rack ready to go. All right. So that's the method I use for these clamp racks. You can use them, you just screw the plywood right to the wall as I did up here, or you can do the French cleat without. But this way, I feel like I really get maximum strength by putting those security screws into the upper part of the French cleat, after into the plywood. But it's not something you need to stress about a lot, but it works great. So once I get them all set, I've got these guys. Let's see. I had to skip the outlet because I need to use that plug every now and then. So let's just put these in the corner, these K-bodies. And then I've got the bar clamps.
Yeah,
Now,
Willie mentioned that K-bodies tend to be wider than F-clamps, so if not properly spaced, they won't fit well next to each other.
yeah, exactly. That's why those 1.5-inch blocks, they give you enough, okay? For the K-bodies, 1.5-inch blocks with the 9/16 spacing, that is enough. And then these, sometimes I'll bring these up and run this up. I've got tape on there. And let it sit like that. You can do that, but they hang on there without even being up because the center of gravity is right over.
That's great.
Let's just throw these up, get this populated.
We don't have to do all of them, do we?
What are you saying?
I'd love for you to show them the other clamp.
All right, I just want to show a little more. This
might
is how much fun it is. I mean, when you put them in, this is where the fun is.
Tom.
What? What? Here we go.
Believe me, there's no one more happy that you're having fun.
I'm putting things away.
That's
I
awesome.
thought you liked that.
I do.
All right, there we go. So you get the idea. We will go ahead and fill it all out, and it looks very nice when they're all in there.
Very nice.
See, it doesn't look
You have
incomplete.
6 more. Do you want to finish?
All right, it was driving me crazy. I think there were some finishers
That's great.
watching that were disappointed too. Let's just get them all on there.
Do you have a design, Tom, for pipe clamps? Any thoughts on that?
No, but I would probably treat it just like this, except you're going to have larger gaps between them, or you're going to tighten on. Now, look at these clamps here. This is a little different method here. These have this long handle, so you can't really set them in this way. And they're fairly lightweight. So I just make like an L bracket, and they just bite on there, and I just slide them up. I don't even tighten them. They just bite right on there. So that's a good way for these. And then you can have L brackets for your little hand spring clamps. I just cluster them on there and put them on themselves. It'd be better if they were laid out, organized. but
tree.
that's them. So this works great for this type of thing. And then that little L bracket, which consists simply, if you want to get, I think something around a 3.5 inch L shape. So this piece is 3.5, this one's like 2 3/4. And you would just put some glue on here. Let's knock this together really quick. We're going to put a good line of glue on the edge of the plywood. Okay, and then we'll just set that larger one on top. And get that nice and flush in the back there. And then we set in the middle. And we got it, okay? So then we're going to work our way across. Get it nice and flush. And now we can just finish it off. Okay, so that's in there good. Now, if you're a little gappy, you're gonna grab a clamp. Hey, I got some right here. So you're gonna just come over here and, what a nerd. All right, I'm gonna put one right here. And I'm just going right in the center. This is kind of fun work because, you know, sometimes you're stressing out about detail and precision with other projects. And when you're making fixtures for the shop, it's a little more relaxing, you know, but you do want to make them nice and make them effective. So this way we get a really good glue bond in case the nails didn't hit it. And I'm going to double check to make sure that inside square looks good and it's perfect. All right, so
No shellac?
no, oh, actually, I didn't mention that, but yeah, with my clamp racks, I did spray shellac. I had some amber shellac, and that's what warmed up that pine.
Love it.
You know, the ceiling. That's what made them that
They
warm.
have a little warm. Yes,
Yeah.
notice that.
Okay, you did. Good.
Well, I did, but it did get mentioned on here too.
Oh, good. So then we have, I just put, you know, the top piece on there. You could run some screws down there, but the clamps aren't that heavy. And so I'm just going to put a couple screw holes here, try to hit a couple studs. And that's what I did back here on this rack, okay? So this one is set in there. I got a couple screws in there. I think I only hit one. And this is similar to those other clamps. I just popped these little quick grips on there, or these little F-style. I just quickly grab and go with these. And they're really handy right behind you because you go to these a lot, it seems like, for little bench operations, either the quick grips or these quick foot-long F-clamps.
Awesome.
So just as we did there. All right.
Great.
Now, we want to just look quickly
briefly
at the
look, yeah.
wooden. We'll have to do this another time. I just cobbled this thing together. It's not, I did this years ago when I was in North Carolina, and I would it's just a glued up piece down the middle, and I cut some cross like dados across both sides so that this post could fit in. And I angled it up slightly. I don't know, it doesn't even look 10 degrees off of horizontal, but close to it. But then I just sized the piece. You're just gonna make the extension however long you need to accommodate that size hand screw clamp. And then I put them up, different spacing. So I've got the smaller one up here for the smallest guys. And then I'm running that dado just to accommodate whatever my stock is for this. And that's a 3-inch piece. And I just screwed a piece of plywood to the back of this piece so I could then find that's into a stud. And I'm just running some screws into the wall, hanging these vertically. I had two of them. I had them side by side at one time in another shop. You know, they were up higher. But here it worked just to get them in a straight column. And I'm sizing these. You can see these are out about a foot. And that gives you enough to get these up and over. And it's nice just to hang them like that. That's the way Pug had them. You could do pipes if you wanted, but I just like the look of the wood, obviously. So that was a crash course in my clamp rack, and now we can refer you to this. I've sent out the photos of that a few times. But remember, if you enjoy this content, please consider subscribing, liking, and sharing. All of that helps us out, and we're thrilled when you do.
Yes, we are.
But thank you again. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. We're looking forward to seeing you next time, on behalf of the cameraman and myself, right back here on Shop Night Live. Good night, everybody.
Oh, he's untrained.
That was quiet.
That was, okay. All right, everybody. Have a great week. See you later.
I'll clean this glue off before it hardens up.